The Toei Fushigi comedy series was a programming block that aired on Fuji TV from 1981 to 1993. The series consisted of 14 shows, all created by a team at Toei Studios, led by producer Toru Hirayama, and with characters designed by manga author Shotaro Ishinomori. At the time, these men were already considered celebrities in Japanese broadcasting, having teamed up to create the cultural phenomenon that was Kamen Rider in 1971. However, unlike the Hero series created by Ishinomori in the 70s, aiming almost exclusively at the young boy demographic, the Toei Fushigi comedy series aimed to appeal to the entire family. Each show aired in the same time slot on Sunday mornings, with each successive series premiering the week after the previous show's finale. Though many of these shows have fallen into obscurity now, these shows and characters altered viewers' perspective on what was possible in Japanese broadcasting, and influenced Japanese television for years to come. The 14 series are often categorized into 3 different eras: the robot and alien pet era, the children's detective team era, and the magical girl era, with each era reflecting what was popular with Japanese children at that time. The origins of the first Toei Fushigi comedy series began with Uchima Minoru, a representative from the Yomiko advertising agency. Yomiko had a long history of sponsoring successful anime since the 60s, but in the early 80s they were falling behind other advertising agencies like Dentsu and Asahi Sushinsha. This provoked them to take more risks, one of these risks being creating a television program aimed at young children and families in the Sunday morning time slot. This time slot was deemed undesirable, with most stations using it to air reruns, assuming most people were either sleeping in or doing outdoor activities on a Sunday morning. Uchima approached Watanabe Yoshinori with Toei, who assembled a team of producers to hear his proposal. Uchima told them if a program is entertaining, children will watch it, regardless of the time, a sentiment that resonated with producer Toru Hirayama. Hirayama reached out to Shotaro Ishinomori, still professionally known as Shotaro Ishimori at that time, and requested he design the suit characters for the series. Hirayama said the power of Ishimori is absolute, and if there was any issue with the show from the station or sponsor, Hirayama could simply say, "This is what Mr. Ishimori wished," and there would be no argument. The first program was called Robot Hachan, and the titular robot's design was inspired by a previous Ishinomori character, Robocon from Ganbare Robocon. The first episode even opens up with an homage to Robocon's fear of cockroaches. Hachan was a robot with amnesia in a world where robots are commonplace. In the first episode, he's led to the home of Professor Aoi, who names him Hachan after the word Hachi, the Japanese word for the number 8, due to the number 8 on his chest. The use of the number 8 in the main character's design and the title card of the series was because Fuji TV was Channel 8 in Japan. And only a few years later, Fuji TV would air another show that also had a robot named Hachan. Hachan's antagonist was the Bara or Disassembly Man, a man who tracked down robots with no robot ID and disassembled them. Prior to Hachan's television debut, Hirayama had hoped for the main character to be performed by a hydraulic robot controlled by a remote off-screen, as he felt suit actors were too obvious to children and broke immersion. The actual robot idea was potentially possible, but would have been too expensive and time-consuming, so Hirayama instead proposed casting a small child to wear the suit. A photo shoot was done with a young girl from the Toei Children's Training School, but the idea was quickly shot down by Hirayama's superiors. When the first episode was completed, it was previewed to the sponsors, who responded with overwhelming disdain. The sponsors felt that Hachan wasn't heroic, and that the villain, Bara Man, was cooler than the main character. But Hirayama defended the episode, stating that Hachan would grow and become more courageous over time, similar to the main character of Tagawa Suiho's Norakuro, who begins the story as a stray dog before becoming a hero. Early episodes were difficult to write as they felt the main character was too passive to insert into interesting stories. This was especially hard for Yoshio Urasawa, who became known for incorporating surrealist humor into his works, a concept that was seen as too risky for the first episode of Hachan. Hirayama told the writers that he loved their scripts, and Urasawa would eventually get to show off his style with episode 3, which featured a strangely masochistic robot, a concept that was very typical for Urasawa. Hachan premiered on October 4th, 1981, with early episodes performing poorly, with the first handful of episodes pulling in under 1% of viewers. Poor reception early on led to several major changes, such as recasting the boy protagonist, recasting Hachan's voice actor, and changing the theme song. Hirayama hoped that by New Year's of 1982, the show would break 10%, but the show wouldn't reach numbers like that until the 21st episode on February 21st, 1982. This episode had Hachan befriend a girls' volleyball team and become close friends with one of the members, a girl named Noriko. Noriko invites Hachan to her house, where we learn that Noriko's older brother is none other than the Bara Man. This leads to the two of them pretending to be friendly while fighting behind Noriko's back. Noriko realizes what's actually happening, causing her to run away, leaving the Bara Man in tears. Noriko then winds up getting harassed by a gang of bikers, only for Hachan to appear and save her. The Barabara Man thanks Hachan, officially granting him a robot permit. This development to the Barabara Man's character was unfortunately spurred by the fact that Saito Haruhiko, who played the Barabara Man, had received another acting role, and would have to leave the show following episode 22. These changes paid off though, as the ratings continued to grow as the show went on, especially towards the end of its run, with the third to last episode pulling in the highest ratings of the series at 16.5%. It also helped that sponsor Bandai released a toy of Hachan in their Chogokin series of figures, a series of toys made with die-cast metal that were incredibly popular in the late 70s and 80s, and remain as highly sought-after collector's items to this day. It may have taken time, but considering where the series started, Hirayama considered Hachan a great success. Because of Hachan's late game ratings hike and profitable merchandising, it was decided that the team would follow up the series with a new show, utilizing the same cast and staff. A new robot was created, once again from the pen of Shotaro Ishinomori, and the first episode would premiere the week after Hachan ended in the same time slot. Batten Robomaru, like its predecessor, was a robot portrayed by a suit actor. This time his whole body was styled after a figure 8, with his design and the show's title incorporating a tic-tac-toe motif. Yoshio Urasawa was promoted to head writer for the series, and was allowed to incorporate more of his surrealist humor, such as the wacky Chairman Himada, who in the first episode is looking for his lost pet Poochie, only for the end of the episode to reveal that Poochie is actually a highly intelligent bow-tie-wearing dinosaur. The main robot, Robomaru, was a superhero robot on his way to planet Pikeru, when a pop-fly baseball enters his UFO, striking his weak spot, his belly button, causing him to crash land on Earth. Urasawa wanted to establish the character as a superhero and wrote him more cartoonishly heroic, possibly in response to the negative reception of Hachan's early episodes. In an early episode, Robomaru even proclaims that he studied Earth's greatest allies of justice, including Astro Boy, Ultraman, Kamen Rider, Superman, and Columbo. The not-so-much antagonists, but more like resident troublemakers of the series, were 3 robots called the Rock, Paper, Scissors Trio, who in the first episode hijack Robomaru's flying saucer, destroying it in a joyride and leaving him stranded on Earth. Robomaru's suit had alternate heads that would change shape to convey different expressions. This was to resolve a problem Hirayama had dealt with on several tokusatsu shows throughout his career. That being that an actor in a suit is unable to convey emotions through facial gestures. Hirayama had tried to remedy this on Robot Detective by having Robot Detective K's eyes change colors based on how he felt, but this was ineffective and felt too unnatural. Robomaru's head altering was also a feature that transitioned easily to his toy counterpart, which was perfect since toy sales were a huge part of why Hachan was a success. Urasawa was overjoyed with the freedom he was given, which allowed him to approach even stories mandated by the network in his own humorous way. For example, for one episode, Toei worked out a deal with a hot spring resort where the staff would all receive a discounted stay if they name-dropped the resort 3 times in the episode. Episode 31, as a result, was not only set in the Miyama Hot Spring Resort, but had a plot where a member of the Rock, Paper, Scissors trio falls in love with a girl named Miyama, causing him to shout her name many times throughout the episode.
ちゃんって言うんだよ。ミヤマちゃんが僕のガールフレンドになって、ミヤマちゃんの理想のボーイ、アラットはミヤマちゃんが好き。天狗もミヤマちゃんが好き。
Unlike Hachan, which struggled at first but pulled in a steady audience towards the end of its broadcast, Robomaru was a ratings hit all the way through, and it was clear that Fuji TV wanted another series to follow its footsteps once it finished. Kazuya Maeda from Fuji TV approached the team and said that the next show couldn't have a robot in it, in fear that the idea was becoming stale. Maeda was also a supporter of Hirayama's original idea for Hachan of foregoing the suit actor, as it was obvious to children when the character was a man in a suit. However, instead of building an actual robot, Maeda asked Hirayama's team to make the main character of the new show smaller, as small as possible, so as not to appear like a person in a suit. At that time, the movie E.T. had recently been released in Japan, and the character was hugely popular with children, so in October of 1983, Fuji TV premiered Petonton. Petonton is the name of a short green alien left behind in the yard of the Hayata family. Slowly, Petonton integrates himself into the Hayata family, getting himself into hijinks around town as he fails to understand human culture. If you're wondering if Urasawa was still the main writer of the series, he was. The personality of the characters were based on the personalities seen in the show It's Okay to Laugh, a popular Japanese variety show, but there was also a new aspect in Petonton absent from the previous entries, a love triangle. In the very first episode, Negita Hayata develops a crush on his classmate Sayuri. This leads to jealousy from Negita's best friend Genta, who secretly has a crush on Negita. Not only was this the first Toei Fushigi series to feature the main character in a love triangle, but the inclusion of a gay character was something no one expected, a move typical of Urasawa. One of the biggest issues behind the scenes was Petonton's design, or particularly the design of the Petonton suit. The producers at Fuji TV loved it for two reasons. The first being that its small size meant that the character and child actors could be shot in the same frame without having to constantly change camera angles. The second being that it wasn't obvious that the character was played by a man in a suit. When the staff was originally shown the suit for Petonton, Hirayama boldly claimed that filming would be impossible. Hirayama got inside the suit himself and was unable to walk without falling over. Maeda got in the suit and tried for himself, but couldn't even walk. Then, stuntman Masato Takagi got in the suit, and although he couldn't walk, proclaimed, "Let's do this," and production began. In a short amount of time, Takagi mastered walking, and during the filming of the first episode, Takagi shocked everyone while filming a scene that director Taro Sakamoto said would be impossible, where Petonton jumps off the back of a truck. Sakamoto was so shocked he immediately asked Takagi if he could skateboard. Takagi could skateboard in real life, but had never done it in costume, especially one that so strictly limited movement. To everyone's shock, Takagi was able to skateboard in the Petonton suit long enough for the shots to be used in the opening credits for the series. Petonton was another hit for the team, with the ratings for episode 23 reaching 20.5%, the highest they'd gotten on any of the Fushigi comedy series so far. As a reward for passing 20%, Fuji TV offered the Toei producers a Monday night 90-minute time slot to air a Petonton special. The special was to be filmed in Hong Kong, however, to reduce costs, Toei was only willing to send minimal staff, and Hirayama would have to serve as producer, script supervisor, and on-set photographer. At that time, Hirayama was in contact with Jackie Chan's manager, who said Jackie found Petonton interesting and would be willing to appear in the special if production was moved to Hong Kong. Hirayama later stated that this was just lip service, as in a later phone call, Jackie's manager changed his wording from "Jackie will do it" to "if he's available." The special was filmed in Hong Kong, but unfortunately, Jackie never showed up, robbing fans of potentially the greatest crossover in television history. For the next series, Maeda approached the team and told them he wanted another pet-style character, but this one would have to be smaller than Petonton. The only way to make the character smaller would be to use puppets, which Hirayama was unsure of due to his lack of experience with puppetry. Ishinomori designed a fairy-like character, and Maeda loved the design so much he came up with the title Dokincho, while Hirayama came up with the starring creature's name, Nemurin. Most puppet shows aren't designed to hide the fact that the characters are puppets, which was exactly what Hirayama wanted. The doll was created by Studio Nova, who at the time were best known for their children's educational show, Okiku Naruko, a show that I had surprisingly seen before. Nemurin herself was a fairy whose 8 million year-long sleep was interrupted by a young girl named Mako Oiwa. Nemurin follows Mako home, bringing her two companions, a bat fairy named Vivian and a rock fairy named Monroe, presumably named for Hollywood stars Vivian Lee and Marilyn Monroe. Similar to Petonton, Nemurin, Vivian, and Monroe live with the Oiwa family, creating chaos in their everyday lives while also helping Mako and her brother, Tamasaburo, when they get into trouble. Nemurin proved very popular with children and adults, receiving so much fan mail that Hirayama got the idea to create a segment called Nemurin's Corner, where Mako, Tamasaburo, and Nemurin would read viewer mail, answer questions, and give out prizes. Alternate recordings were made for different regions, as to avoid references to things like Japanese holidays in regions where episodes wouldn't air until after that holiday had passed. These segments are mostly lost today, though one Nemurin corner has surfaced online where viewer Yuki Noto asked Nemurin what to do when her dad drinks too much and starts acting mean, to which Nemurin replies, "Slap a bow on his forehead." Despite Nemurin's popularity, the series hit a major road bump early on in its broadcast. The sponsor for the series, Takara, had developed a line of Nemurin dolls that were expected to sell incredibly well. However, by some error, they didn't have a factory to produce the dolls, and had to tell Toei and Fuji TV that making the dolls would be impossible. Toy sales were an important aspect of the Toei Fushigi series, and one of the core reasons they were profitable. In fact, Hirayama was told that without toy sales, Nemurin was estimated to be a net loss, and so the series was abruptly ended at episode 31. This is the only reason given for Nemurin's cancellation, but it strangely doesn't seem to make sense. For one, Takara ran commercials for Nemurin dolls, and the same doll can be seen as a prize in the Nemurin's Corner segment. Secondly, the series that directly follows Nemurin, Kamitaman, didn't have a toy sponsor. Toru Hirayama said himself that he had never seen a show like this without a toy sponsor, and was confused as to why there weren't toys despite the show running for 51 episodes. Because of these factors, I believe that Nemurin was cancelled possibly because the higher-ups disliked having a show that appealed more to young girls than young boys. Following the popularity of Petonton, networks had begun developing children's shows for Sunday mornings for other channels, and it's possible that Fuji TV may have thought that a show that appealed more to girls than boys would be too risky when the market was filling with competition. They may have also just not liked that it was a girl show. That's apparently something that's just very common with television networks. On the bright side, Sayuri Uchida, who played Mako, would go on to play Blue Swallow in Jetman a few years later, and despite mishandling, Toru Hirayama stated it was one of his favorite shows to create in his 2012 book, Confessions of a Crybaby Producer. Kamitaman was the 5th series in the Toei Fushigi comedy series, following the trend of the pet-style character, while also being the first in the series to incorporate a superhero angle. Kamitaman is a god discovered in a sealed ramen bowl. When Shinsuke discovers the bowl, he pours hot water on it, releasing the god Kamitaman. In exchange for freeing him, Kamitaman offers Shinsuke a wish, which Shinsuke uses to become a superhero, Nemotoman, a parody of various superheroes, especially the ones created by Shotaro Ishinomori, like Kamen Rider. Kamitaman, like Nemurin, was a small character controlled by an off-screen remote control. The series had no toys, which baffled Hirayama in retrospect. The show overall is also less interesting than Nemurin or Petonton, who, despite their awkward appearance, were fun characters. Kamitaman is just boring and feels like he's trying too hard in every aspect, including his design. Yoshio Urasawa said in an interview that he didn't recall much of Kamitaman, but that he believed it did poorly compared to previous series. Hirayama's 2012 book, where he detailed his work on every series he worked on throughout his career, said the most memorable part of Kamitaman was when he was accused of falling asleep during a screening, but defends himself saying that he just has a loud nose and he was just breathing. Despite lackluster ratings and no toys, Kamitaman ran for 51 episodes. Following its completion came the next Toei Fushigi series, Morimori Bokkun. Morimori Bokkun was a return to form, with a robot main character portrayed by a suit actor. By this time, Kazuya Maeda, who had constantly been pushing for innovations with each installment, stepped down from his position and was replaced by Endo Ryunosuke. Under Ryunosuke, we'd see a show that sought to combine elements of earlier entries like Robomaru and Petonton. For example, Robomaru was praised for having a unique setting, something less common in tokusatsu but seen more frequently in anime, with some pointing to Dr. Slump's Penguin Village as a potential influence. Bokkun was set in a world where humans live alongside robots and talking animals, both of which were performed by suit actors. Bokkun is a robot built by Dr. Chiron to improve the relationship between animals, humans, and robots. Inside his chest is a clock which he can use to slow down or stop time, and he can rotate his head to make objects levitate. The plot and design of the main character drew even more heavily from Robocon than Hachan. Bokkun's design was even a prototype for Robocon, which Ishinomori had made before he decided to give Robocon an antenna. Masato Takagi, the stuntman that brought Petonton to life, wouldn't return for Bokkun, as he unfortunately passed away in a traffic accident on his way to film a scene for Sukeban Deka 2 a few months prior to Bokkun. Bokkun ran for 39 episodes, underperforming like its predecessor, and also like its predecessor, both Yoshio Urasawa and Toru Hirayama had very little to say about the series when asked. With the end of Bokkun came the end of the first era of the Toei Fushigi comedy series, but by this time, Sunday morning shows that captivated the whole family were a necessity, and the series would continue on with some major changes. Omorikiri Tantedan Hado Gumi, or Hard Gumi for short, was the 7th show in the series and the first in what would become the Children's Detective Team era. The series focused on a gang of elementary school kids, each with a specific interest, be it animals, ninjas, martial arts, or computers. Yoshio Urasawa stepped back as head writer, becoming a sub-writer on the series, though his influence as a writer is still felt in the series. In the first episode, we see the gang causing trouble at school, culminating in a prank where they play a homemade tokusatsu show on the school's TVs, featuring a villain known as the Phantom Thief Matenro. The video ends with a scene that shows one of the kids peeing, landing the gang in the most trouble they've ever been in. That night, the actual phantom thief Matenro appears before them, stealing Hiroshi's computer keyboard and challenging them to defeat him in a battle of wits in order to win it back. Similar to how Petonton was inspired by the popularity of E.T., Hard Gumi may have been inspired by the recently released film The Goonies, though unlike with Petonton, this inspiration was never directly stated. An influence that was directly stated were the works of Japanese mystery writer Rampu Edogawa, specifically the books The Boy Detective Club and The Fiend with 20 Faces. Similar to the titular villain 20 Faces, Matenro is a gentleman thief, opting to steal jewels in place of any violent crime. Another influence may have been Shotaro Ishinomori's manga Greengrass, which was published a few years prior, and also featured a group of kids making their own tokusatsu, where the main character mysteriously comes to life. Ishinomori even pitched Greengrass to Toei to produce it as a tokusatsu around 1983, but it was rejected, possibly because Toei wanted to focus more on their new Metal Hero series. The use of drama and suspense in tandem with Urasawa's comedy made the Fushigi comedy series feel as if it was maturing, especially in comparison to the previous two installments, which felt more like a refusal to mature. Instead of action figures and vinyl dolls, the main toys promoted for Hard Gumi were gadgets like walkie-talkies and metal detectors. There was also a sponsorship with Panasonic bicycles, which were featured prominently throughout the series. Even as Matenro committed crimes, he often helped the members of Hard Gumi grow, and in the final episode, it's revealed that Matenro's true identity is none other than their teacher, Ochiai-sensei, which was pretty obvious to the viewers as they were always in the same place and also have the same voice. However, that didn't take away from the power of the final scene, which the staff called unforgettably moving. Hard Gumi's highest rated episode drew in 19.6% of viewers, making it the second highest rating in all of the Toei Fushigi comedy series, following Petonton's 23rd episode. Hard Gumi ran for 50 episodes, revitalizing the Toei Fushigi series, doing so well that it was determined that the next show would also be about a team of kid detectives. Jaman Tantedan Marin Gumi, or German detective team Marin Gumi, was the successor to Hard Gumi, featuring a new team of elementary school kids. Similarly to Hard Gumi, the Marin Gumi kids create their own Phantom Zigomar. In the first episode, while practicing martial arts with leader Takashi's uncle Sherlock, an unsuccessful mystery writer, the kids break a glass window and are forced to compensate the store owner. That night, the children's Phantom Zigomar threatens to rob the president of a predatory loan company. The kids try to catch him but are unsuccessful. Zigomar then gives the kids the money to replace the window, but challenges them to use their skills and their knowledge to bring him to justice. The kids decide that in order to become a detective team, they need to find a secret base, and while searching, they discover an abandoned German U-boat, which is what leads to them naming themselves the German detective team Marin Gumi. Though Urasawa was still a subwriter, the series frequently utilized more surrealistic stories, seen more frequently in earlier series like Petonton. The series started off strong, riding off the success of Hard Gumi, but became even more popular partway through thanks to the popularity of the recurring characters Dr. Amemiya and his son Taro, as well as a romantic subplot between the characters Takashi and Kaori. Similar to Matenro's identity, it's implied that Uncle Sherlock is actually Zigomar, as they both wish to see the Marin Gumi grow and have the same voice. And its highest audience rating was 19.6%, tying it with Hard Gumi. Following the finale of Marin Gumi came a project that would tie both series together. Tantedan's special Marin Gumi vs. Hado Gumi was a crossover film, aired following the conclusion of Marin Gumi. The film opens with the Marin Gumi at a museum where they see a rare treasure known as Pandora's Box. The museum receives a letter from the thief Zigomar threatening to steal the box. That night, while staking out the museum, the children catch a culprit, who turns out to be the Phantom Matenro. Before Matenro can escape, he's attacked by the Phantom Zigomar, leading up to a battle between the two phantoms. While distracted by the battle, Kaori uses a slingshot to knock the keys out of their hand, and the phantoms decide that they must form a truce in order to retrieve the keys and open the box. In order to defeat both phantoms, the Marin Gumi must team up with Hard Gumi. And despite only a little over a year passing, the actors have visibly aged, which actually ties in really well with this era's theme of growing up and maturing. This is especially true for the actor who played Hiroshi, who was already a few years older than his on-screen character. Hiroshi's age difference works out especially well, since his arc in the film is that he's moved on from Hard Gumi and is on the path of becoming a delinquent. Yasuko tries to convince Hiroshi to come back and catch Matenro, but Hiroshi refuses. This eventually leads to him being coerced by an evil doctor to eat special macaroni, which turns him evil and bestows upon him the power of eye beams. The movie served as a really fun conclusion for both the characters and this particular era of the Toei Fushigi comedy series. Because despite popularity, this would be the end of the children's detective team era after only 2 entries. Under these circumstances, the era was able to end on a high note, and avoided the same stagnation that brought us Kamitaman and Bokkun. Now in the deep end of the 1980s, Japanese television was populated with a new genre of TV drama, the girl delinquent drama. Inspired by the success of teenage girl-driven action shows like Sukeban Deka and Shoujo Commando Izumi, these shows appealed to both young boys and girls, and served as successful vehicles to promote up-and-coming idols. And so it was decided the next Toei Fushigi series would be Magical Girl Chukana Pai Pai. Pai Pai was played by Natsuki Ozawa, who was an up-and-coming idol, and had also played a starring role as Miko in Fuji TV's own girl delinquent drama, Hana no Asuka Gumi. Producer Takashi Ishihara came up with the Chinese theme, and Yoshiaki Kobayashi would take over for Toru Hirayama, who would leave the Toei Fushigi series following Marin Gumi. The show followed the titular Chinese magical girl Pai Pai, who flees to the human world to avoid marrying Gomoku, the king of the Makai realm. This plot will feel very ironic in a little bit. Pai Pai takes up residence with the Takayama family, becoming the babysitter of Yukio Takayama's 3 sons. Mr. Takayama is an archaeologist who in the first episode claims he needs a babysitter as he can hear the Incas calling his name. While serving as the boy's babysitter, Pai Pai deals with Gomoku's henchmen trying to drag her back to the Makai realm, as well as the boy's strict aunt, who demands they bring honor to the family name and believes Pai Pai is a bad influence. At the end of the first episode, she also discovers Pai Pai's secret. Pai Pai transforms by chanting the magic words Urana, Shaupara, Taupara, Kasai Tabo, and blows into her wand, which was the gimmick of the main toy for the series. In order to draw Pai Pai back to the Makai realm, Gomoku turns Pai Pai's love Raymond into a bowl of ramen noodles. Raymond would eventually be turned back though in episode 26, where he convinces Gomoku's henchmen to turn on him. After Gomoku is defeated, Pai Pai and Raymond decide to get married, but these abrupt developments weren't planned by the writers or network, as Pai Pai was only halfway through its run at that time. Despite intending to run for 50 episodes, Natsuki Ozawa announced she was leaving the show halfway through production, and a conclusion was hastily filmed, along with a brief after the credits sequence introducing a new magical girl, Ipanema. It was unclear why Ozawa left, but it was speculated that she was having an affair with her manager and may have gotten pregnant. Ozawa did leave the industry for several years, resurfacing in 1993 when it was discovered she was doing work as a nude model along with working in cabaret clubs. And a few years later, she'd entered the Japanese adult video industry, where former idol is actually a popular genre. In 2003, Ozawa did an interview where she said that she was only 17 at the time and didn't fully understand what she was doing, but she had become exhausted and stressed out from work and had planned to elope with her manager, only for him to abandon her and essentially ruin her career. Because of Ozawa's disappearance, Magical Girl Chukana Ipanema was rushed into production, using the same actors and sets. This was the first and only instance of a Toei Fushigi comedy series being set in the same universe with the same characters outside of a crossover special. The series opens with Ipanema, a magical girl in training who attended the Chuka Witches Academy. However, on her graduation day, she's denied a pendant to turn her into a magical girl because her father has gone bankrupt and couldn't pay for her tuition. Ipanema tries to ask her father what happened, but he's mysteriously gone missing, which leads to her entering the human world to try and find him. Ipanema discovers the Takayama siblings, noticing that they still have Pai Pai's pendant, which she recognizes from the Chuka Witches Academy. Ipanema befriends the boys and takes over as their new babysitter in place of Pai Pai. Eventually, the boys come to accept her, giving her Pai Pai's pendant and turning her into her very own magical girl. Along with introducing a new magical girl, the series also introduced a new villain, Happosai Sensei, the teacher from the Chuka Witches Academy who denied Ipanema her pendant, and it's also revealed that she is the one who kidnapped Ipanema's parents. Happosai was played by Rie Shibata, who also played the Takayama siblings' aunt, but it's unclear to me if these two characters were played by the same actor as an inside joke, or if they were just shorthanded having to introduce a whole new set of characters on short notice. Ipanema was played by an up-and-coming idol herself, Wakako Shimazaki, who would go on to have a very successful career, still making regular TV appearances to this day. Shimazaki was very popular with viewers, drawing in higher ratings than Pai Pai. Despite its popularity though, Ipanema was the shortest series, as the team only needed to film enough episodes to fill out the rest of Pai Pai's time. Like many of the Toei Fushigi comedy series that came before it, Ipanema's finale was a Christmas episode, and in the final episode, Ipanema would fight Hapasai along with the true mastermind, the president of the Chuka Witches Academy, Hapasai's older sister. And Ipanema would eventually defeat them using the same spell Gomoku used to turn ramen into a bowl of ramen noodles. Ipanema's love interest was a boy named Euphrates, who was a servant to her rich family, and similarly to Pai Pai's final episode, the two profess their love for each other and decide to return to the Makai realm together. However, before returning, Ipanema spends one last night with the Takayama family, where everyone gathers together to celebrate Christmas. Where Pai Pai's finale was abrupt, Ipanema took its time, allowing the series to end with a tearful goodbye between Ipanema and Shingo Takayama, the brother who Ipanema had the closest relationship to. In the end, Ipanema's ratings were on par with that of Batten Robomaru, and the growth of Shimazaki's career due to her acting in the role was enough for Fuji TV to continue with their magical girl route. For their next series, Shotaro Ishinomori designed a female hero inspired by a previous character he had created called Androcommon, who many consider to be Japan's first female superhero, and had her own tokusatsu in 1971 titled Suki Suki Majo Sensei. Ishinomori said he based the heroine's personality after Zoro, as seen in the 1975 film. However, Kenichiro Haraoka from Fuji TV came up with the idea to use a French theme and named the character Poitrine, after the French word for breast. Poitrine followed high school girl Yuko Murakami. On her way to school one morning, she stops by a Shinto shrine where she has an encounter with God. God gives her the power to transform into the magical girl Poitrine. However, if her identity is ever revealed, she'll be turned into a frog. Rie Shibata returned, playing Detective Honda, a police detective who hates Poitrine for catching criminals that she couldn't. Yoshio Urasawa became the main scriptwriter again, and when I say main scriptwriter, I actually mean the only scriptwriter. Urasawa is solely credited for writing every episode of Poitrine. As you can imagine, this led to many surreal episodes, like when the villain Diable crucifies Poitrine and then has a chef force feed her food until she's too fat to defeat him. Poitrine is the most well-known of all the Toei Fushigi shows, but is unfortunately usually only remembered for one reason. Poitrine has been cited as an influence on Sailor Moon, which had its own anime debut only 2 years after Poitrine, as well as the prototype manga Sailor V debuting 1 year after Poitrine. The influence makes sense though, as Toei did work with manga author Naoki Takeuchi to develop Sailor Moon for television, and the series as a whole does utilize tropes from many Shotaro Ishinomori series, including Super Sentai, Kamen Rider, and even the aforementioned Androcommon, who, did I mention, has a moon theme. It's even possible that Tuxedo Mask was partially inspired by Matenro, though it can't be said with certainty. Some have claimed that Tuxedo Mask was actually inspired by the character Phoenix from the shoujo manga series Honey Honey. However, both Matenro and Phoenix are inspired by Maurice LeBlanc's Arsène Lupin, and Sailor Moon even mentions this connection to Lupin early in the manga. Some other aspects of Sailor Moon transposed from Poitrine are Yuko's brother Takuto, who despite constantly fighting with his sister is a huge fan of Poitrine, even starting a Poitrine fan club. This same dynamic can be seen in Sailor Moon with Usagi's brother Shingo. The most well-known plot point lifted though was halfway through Poitrine, where the villain Diable captures Poitrine, so to save her, God turns her sister Momoko into a magical girl, becoming Poitrine Petite, and according to the Ishinomori revised hero guide, this was where Naoko Takeuchi got the idea for Sailor Minimoon, or Chibiusa. Aside from aesthetics, I think that Urasawa's surrealistic approach to scripts was another influence on Sailor Moon, which has a ton of similar gags to what you'd see from Urasawa. Even though it didn't have the highest ratings, Poitrine would be the most culturally significant character to come from the Toei Fushigi comedy series. And this comes from a combination of the character influencing Sailor Moon, as well as Poitrine's actress Yuko Hanashima appearing on several primetime TV shows, usually in character. In 2012, Poitrine appeared in the Kamen Rider Wizard and Forze Movie War Ultimatum, which featured appearances from various classic Ishinomori heroes, including the Akumizer 3, who are villains now I guess, Inazuman, and finally Poitrine. And although Poitrine in the film is portrayed by actress Mara Irakiri, Yuko Hanashima did make an appearance in costume at the premiere. Poitrine ran for 51 episodes, but due to its popularity, the final episode was aired as a 1-hour special, so in reruns and on home releases, these were broken up into 2 episodes, making it 52 episodes total. Following Poitrine came another magical girl, mysterious girl of the Nile Thutmose. Following the pattern of the previous series, Thutmose would have an Egyptian theme. The series opens with Sanae Nakajima visiting a cemetery with her family. When they arrive, they clean up the gravesite, revealing markers in the shape of a pyramid and a sphinx, as Sanae's dad explains that their ancestors were actually Egyptian. While there, Sanae trips, destroying the monument and releasing 51 demons of the Nile Valley, who were trapped there by Sanae's ancestor, the original Thutmose. And so, Sanae must capture those demons using her newly acquired Egyptian-themed powers. Originally, Thutmose was proposed as a mystery show, where a demon would possess a person and cause chaos in the world, while the main characters follow clues to find out who that person was. This style wasn't popular with younger viewers, and halfway through, the style was changed to focus more on Thutmose battling her enemies, similar to Poitrine. Also similar to Poitrine, the entire series was written by Yoshio Urasawa, giving the show a very similar feel, with villains like the Geeky Devil, a demon voiced by Shigeru Chiba who becomes so obsessed with Kamen Rider, he possesses a man, becoming an amalgamation of various tokusatsu heroes. He then proceeds to run around town ringing a bell that turns all children that hear it into superheroes. Early on in development, there was even plans to do a Thutmose and Poitrine crossover film similar to the Hard Gumi and Marin Gumi crossover film. However, the plans fell through and the script was rewritten to remove Poitrine and later used for episode 31. Thutmose concluded after 51 episodes, actually pulling in better ratings than Poitrine, though Poitrine's larger pop culture visibility would lead to her becoming the most well-known Toei Fushigi magical girl over time. For the series that would follow Thutmose, producer Jun Hikase from Fuji TV told Urasawa he wanted something completely different, as he felt the international magical girl angle would become stale. As a result, the next Toei Fushigi comedy series was Uta Dai Ryugujo, or Sing, Palace of the Great Dragon God. The story for the series was a play on the classic Japanese folktale of Taro Urashima, who after rescuing a turtle is brought to the Great Palace of the Dragon God under the sea. In Urasawa's rendition, a boy named Taro Urashima saves a cab driver named Kamiyama, who's being berated by an angry customer. This leads to Kamiyama taking Taro under the sea, where he meets Otohime, the princess of Ryugujo. Ryugujo is a paradise where every day is a musical, and Otohime wants Taro to help her save Ryugujo from being devastated by pollution. However, Taro is reluctant at first. Later that day, Taro finds out that his parents are planning to move to Fiji for his father's work, so Taro brings Otohime home for them and convinces them to let her watch him while they're gone. The musical angle was a defining aspect of the series and worked to promote lead actress Hiroko Nakayama's singing career, as having your lead idol sing songs in the middle of the episodes was a lot better promotion than just the opening or ending song. Though the musical theming is what sets the series apart from other Toei Fushigi comedy entries, the concept of a musical based around the tale of Taro Urashima is far from original, with the concept potentially being inspired by the 1949 Japanese musical Dancing Ryugujo. The first few episodes of Dai Ryugujo saw a major ratings drop compared to the ending of Thutmose, with most early episodes scoring in the low single digits. In an attempt to improve the ratings, more fight scenes were added, similar to what was done with Thutmose, but these were less effective here. The toy sales for the series weren't much better, and it was during Dai Ryugujo that the Toei Fushigi comedy series would face off against its greatest enemy, an enemy they were partially responsible for creating. The popularity of Sailor Moon, especially the Sailor Moon anime, can't be overstated, as the series was a hit around the entire world. Although Sailor Moon was also created by Toei, the anime was airing on TV Asahi, one of Fuji TV's competitors, so even though both projects were being worked on by the same studio, they weren't exactly playing on the same team. Sailor Moon was a merchandising behemoth, and the series' main demographic was young girls, the same as the Toei Fushigi comedy series. During its initial run though, Sailor Moon was airing new episodes on Saturdays, while the Toei Fushigi comedy series aired on Sunday mornings. Meaning it wasn't difficult for kids to watch and enjoy both shows. Where kids had to make a choice was in the toy aisle, and it was there that the sales numbers showed that more kids chose Sailor Moon over Dai Ryugujo. In order to compete with Sailor Moon, Fuji TV decided that the next series would have to return to the international magical girl route. And because of the popularity of Sailor Moon's team dynamic, there needed to be a team of magical girls from the beginning of the program. And so, the final program in the Toei Fushigi comedy series was Three Sisters Shushutorian. Shushutorian was about three sisters, Yukiko, Tsukiko, and Hanako. One day, the three sisters decide to go to karaoke so they don't have to listen to their parents fighting. It's at karaoke that they meet Ondori-sama, the the god of the Year of the Rooster, who is unable to perform his expected duties as he's become too distracted by karaoke. Ondori-sama grants them powers, turning them into Shushutorian, magical girls with a traditional Japanese theme. He then tells them they must protect the world from yokai that threaten the Year of the Rooster. This of course coincided with the real-world Year of the Rooster. If the sisters are successful, Ondori-sama says he'll make it so that their parents stop fighting. But if their identities are revealed, he'll turn the three sisters into fried chicken. Throughout the series, the three sisters were assisted by Fried Chicken Man, a man whose personality and appearance were based off Japanese actor Tony Tani, and who would deliver them messages on behalf of Ondori-sama. One of the Fried Chicken Man's most memorable gags was the third act cutaway. In the third act of every episode, just as the villain is defeated, the scene would cut away to Fried Chicken Man doing something nonsensical or saying something completely unrelated to the story or characters. In an interview done for the magazine Toei Hero Max, director Kaneharu Mitsumura said that when they had completed the first episode, the runtime was a minute shorter than necessary. And so he hastily filmed a scene with the Fried Chicken Man where he explains the meaning behind the proverb, "The last drop makes the cup run over," and inserted it into the end of the final battle. It was so absurd that it wound up becoming a running gag of the series. Unlike the previous Magical Girl series, which were developed under the premise of promoting an idol, Shushutorian was specifically made to feel more like a Super Sentai series. This is something you'll first notice in the opening, which is specifically composed to sound like a Super Sentai opening. The lyrics were also written to capture the characters' on-screen personalities, as opposed to focusing on their idol personas. Actress Satomi Hirose, who played Hanako, would even go on to play Ninja White in Ninja Sentai Kaku Ranger the following year. There's even a reference to Shushutorian in episode 35, where Hirose's former co-stars appear as her childhood friends. They even fight the villain of the episode by teaming up in headbands and sailor suits, referencing both Shushutorian and Sailor Moon. Shushutorian did much better than Diary Ugujo ratings-wise, but ratings weren't the only battle Fuji TV was fighting. They needed toy sales, and in the merchandising department, Shushutorian couldn't raise a finger to Sailor Moon. Early on, it was decided the show would only run for 39 episodes, and in its place, Fuji TV would begin airing the soccer anime Aoki Densetsu Shoot, as anime was proving more popular than tokusatsu at the time, with many Super Sentai series struggling to hit 10%. But Shushutorian and the Toei Fushigi comedy series wouldn't go out with a whimper. As the series was reaching its finale, Jun Hikasa received a call from Tsuburaya Productions regarding an upcoming project, Ultraman vs. Kamen Rider. This phone call gave Hikase an idea, and plans for the series were changed at the last minute. But lucky for Hikase, Aoki Densetsu Shoot was having production issues, and its premiere was moved back by 3 weeks, giving Shushutorian 3 more episodes to work with. As a result, episode 40 opens with Tsukiko making a wish on a shooting star to meet Ultraman. The next day, kaiju from the Ultra series begin attacking the city. The Shushutorian fight the kaiju and have no trouble defeating them, that is until the Bolton alien grows huge. The Shushutorian all call out for Ultraman to help them, and then... Susumu Kurobe, reprising his role as Shin Hayata, transforms into Ultraman and fights the Bolton alien. Ultraman then turns the Shushutorian huge so they can fight alongside him. The entire scene was shot on short notice, with Tsuburaya providing the set for the final fight with the Bolton alien, as well as Tsuburaya employees appearing as extras in the scenes where the civilians are being attacked. The Ultraman crossover wouldn't be the final episode though, with 2 more episodes following it before the end of the series. But in truth, this episode feels like the conclusion, not just to Shushutorian, but to the Toei Fushigi comedy series as a whole. Following the Toei Fushigi comedy series, Yoshio Urasawa would continue working as a writer, and his surrealist comedy can be seen in his later works like Gekiso Sentai Car Ranger, a series that utilizes humor so much that it's often called a parody of Super Sentai series. The 6th ranger for the series, White Racer, is a magical girl named Radiata Fanbelt, and after her first appearance, her actress was changed, leading to jokes about how the character looks different. Many believe the casting change was an intentional joke to parody the casting changes done in TV dramas. But since the character is a magical girl and these episodes were written by Urasawa, I wouldn't be surprised if this was inspired by the Pai Pai controversy. Although Poitrine has been eclipsed by Sailor Moon, the character has had enough public awareness in Japan that she often appears in most Ishinomori art books and guides. In 2007, Urasawa and Yomiko Advertising developed a 13-episode parody series titled Socialite Belle Panchan, a parody of Poitrine about a housewife that transforms into a superhero. And Poitrine's popularity has only increased since her appearance in the 2012 Kamen Rider film. What I initially thought was a series of Robocon knockoffs and Magical Girl rehashes was actually 14 unique shows, several of which blew me away with the quality of their characters and humor. and I genuinely think they deserve more attention. Many of these shows can be hard to find in English-speaking countries, and although a few of them are uploaded to Toei's official YouTube channel, many episodes aren't, and some have been privatized due to using copyrighted music, like the Hachan episode when they're dancing to YMO. Luckily, using NordVPN, I was able to create a Japanese Hulu account, which gave me access to all 14 shows and in the highest quality on the internet. Everyone on YouTube talks about how NordVPN hides your IP address and protects you from hackers, which is true, it does do that. But what I like to use it for is to set my location to Japan and instantly have access to tons of Japanese media in the highest quality possible. In my opinion, the only satisfying way to legally watch JoJo's Bizarre Adventure is on Japanese Netflix, where you can watch the show in Japanese with English subtitles, except these subtitles are more accurate than the ones available in Western countries, and they also retain the musical references that were removed from the Western release. Changing your location is literally as easy as clicking a dot on the screen and connecting to one of Nord's servers. And one subscription gets you protected on up to 6 devices, including iPhone and Android. I also love that my Japanese Amazon Video account lets me watch the 1979 Cyborg 009 series in higher quality than a VHS rip. So go to nordvpn.com/mercuryfalcon or use code mercuryfalcon at checkout to get 73% off a 2-year plan plus 4 extra months.